He cured the alien princess with human medicine. Now her people want him as their savior. Jason adjusted the strap of his worn medical case as he stepped off the shuttle ramp and into the heart of Lyra Prime. The air was sharp and metallic, tinted with a faint shimmer that clung to the alien megacity's high towers and gleaming skyways. He wasn't here as a soldier or a diplomat. He was here as a healer. A man who had spent years mastering medicine, fusing human science with technology most cultures didn't even trust. Slim in build, with dark hair kept neatly trimmed and green eyes that seemed to study everything with quiet precision, Jason looked more scholar than savior. Yet the way the alien guards followed him with their golden eyes made it clear. He was not welcome here. The palace loomed ahead, a marvel of ivory stone and silver arches that seemed to pierce the sky. Jason's footsteps echoed as he entered the great hall, and at once he felt the weight of dozens of alien eyes upon him. The nobles whispered in low voices, robes trailing like rivers of color across the polished floors. To them, he was an intruder, an outsider whose hands had no place near the royal family. But standing at the head of the hall, tall and commanding in armor gilded with black and gold, was King Darius. His jaw was sharp, his posture unyielding, every line of his face carved by years of power and pride. Beside him stood Queen Lyra, slender and graceful, her silver robes glimmering as if spun from starlight. Unlike her husband, her expression carried no disdain, only a quiet, desperate hope. Jason bowed, careful not to falter beneath the icy gaze of the court. He had heard the whispers before he ever set foot here, that their princess was cursed, blind since birth, a weakness that threatened the stability of the dynasty. He had not been told why he was summoned, but now he understood. This was no mere medical consultation. This was politics, power, and a plea all tangled together. And then he saw her. From behind Queen Lyra stepped a small figure, no older than 8. Princess Lyra. Her silver-tinted skin caught the faint glow of the hall's torches. Her black hair fell like a soft curtain over her small shoulders, and her pale eyes, clouded and sightless, stared straight ahead. She held a small crystal toy clutched to her chest, her hands delicate but steady. The court turned away, ashamed to look at her, but Jason stepped forward. He did not see a curse. He saw a child, one who had been denied what others took for granted. "Human," King Darius said at last, his voice echoing through the chamber. "They claim you can heal the broken. They claim your kind can challenge the will of the gods. If that is true, prove it." Jason looked at Lyra, then back at the king. And for the first time since stepping foot on Lyra Prime, he let his voice carry across the hall. "Then let me try." The great hall emptied slowly, the nobles retreating behind walls of silken curtains, their whispers fading into silence. Jason was escorted down a long corridor lit by blue crystal lanterns, their glow soft and wavering like captured starlight. At the end stood a door carved with the royal crest. The guards opened it without a word, and Jason stepped inside. The chamber was quiet, filled with soft drapes and polished stone floors. In the center sat Lyra. She was smaller up close than she had seemed in the hall, her delicate figure half hidden beneath folds of pale fabric. Her clouded eyes stared ahead at nothing, and her small fingers toyed absently with the edges of her crystal doll. Jason knelt, careful not to startle her. He spoke gently, his voice warm but steady. "Princess Lyra, may I sit with you?" Her head turned slightly at the sound, her sightless eyes searching for the source of his voice. She nodded, barely a whisper of movement. Jason lowered himself onto the polished floor across from her, setting his case quietly aside. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she broke the silence. "They say you are human," she said, her voice soft but clear. "That you can see everything. The stars, the colors, the faces." "I can," Jason answered. "And I believe you can too, if you'll let me try to help you." Her small hands tightened around the doll. "They call me cursed," she whispered. "Even my cousins. My father says nothing, but I can hear it in his voice. Sometimes, I wish I could disappear." Jason felt the weight of her words. She was only a child, yet already carrying the shame of a kingdom. He leaned closer, lowering his voice as though sharing a secret. You are not cursed, Lyra. You are strong. Stronger than anyone here, because you've lived in darkness and still found a way to smile. For the first time, a faint smile touched her lips, fragile but real. The door opened softly behind them, and Queen Lyra stepped in. Her tall, graceful frame seemed to float across the floor, her silver robe trailing like moonlight. She placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder, her expression tender but heavy with worry. Human, she said quietly, her voice almost trembling. If you can do this, if you can give her sight, you will not only heal my daughter, you will give her a future. Jason looked from the queen to the princess, then back again. He had traveled across stars for medicine, for knowledge, for duty. But in that moment, staring into Lyra's clouded eyes, he realized this was something else entirely. This was a chance to give a child her world. The next morning, Jason was summoned back to the Grand Council chamber. The walls echoed with the low hum of alien voices, nobles seated in half-circles like predators waiting for weakness. At the center sat King Darius, his heavy crown gleaming under the crystal light, eyes sharp as blades. Beside him stood Queen Lyra, composed but anxious, her gaze shifting often toward Jason as if silently urging him to speak carefully. Jason stepped forward, his medical case in hand, and bowed respectfully. Your Majesties, he began. I believe I can restore the princess's sight, not with prayers or charms, but with medicine, with human science. The murmurs began immediately. Nobles leaned to one another, scandal dripping from their voices. At last, the high priest, draped in black and gold robes, stepped forward. His voice cut the air like a blade. Blasphemy! You would tamper with the body the gods gave her. The child's blindness is fate. To alter it is to spit upon the heavens themselves. Jason stood firm. With respect, fate is not what I see. I see a condition that can be treated. I've seen it before: damaged tissue, undeveloped nerves. With implants, I can repair her sight. She can live as she was meant to. King Darius rose from his throne, his armor shifting with a metallic groan. His voice was low but dangerous. Human, do you think yourself wiser than our gods? Than centuries of tradition? My daughter's condition is not your puzzle to solve. Jason's heart pounded, but he did not flinch. I think your daughter deserves the chance to see her mother's face, to see her world. If you allow me, I will give her that chance. If I fail, I will answer for it with my life. The chamber fell silent. Even the nobles who had been whispering stopped at his words. Queen Lyra broke the stillness. She rose, her silver robes flowing, and placed a hand on the king's arm. Her voice trembled, but carried strength. She is not a curse, Darius. She is our daughter. And if this human can give her sight, we owe it to her to let him try. The king's jaw clenched, his pride and fear battling behind his stern expression. Finally, he lowered his head, his voice heavy with warning. One attempt. If you fail, human, the price will be your life. Jason bowed once more, feeling the weight of every eye in the chamber. The path forward was dangerous but clear. For Lyra, he would risk everything. The chamber chosen for the operation was nothing like the sterile labs Jason was used to. It was dimly lit, its walls carved with flowing symbols that glowed faintly in the dark. Blue crystal braziers cast shifting shadows, their light reflecting off golden statues of the gods. It felt less like an operating room and more like a temple, and perhaps that was intentional. Jason laid out his instruments with steady hands. Sleek human tools crafted for precision, vials of nanite solutions, and 2 small crystalline implants designed to harmonize with the alien nervous system. Every move was watched. At the edges of the chamber stood priests with grim faces, nobles murmuring quietly, and guards ready should anything go wrong. At the front, King Darius stood stone still, while Queen Lyra held her daughter close, whispering softly before letting her climb onto the cushioned table. Lyra lay back, her tiny hands trembling as she still clutched the crystal toy she always carried. Jason gently moved it to the side, meeting her clouded eyes with calm certainty. You'll hear me the whole time, he told her. "And when it's over, you may open your eyes to something new." She nodded once, trusting him more than anyone else in the room. The procedure began. Jason's tools hummed softly as he made the first careful incisions. The implants glowed faintly as he aligned them with Lyra's optic nerves, adjusting connections with almost microscopic precision. Time seemed to vanish. Every second stretched, every breath weighed. Sweat gathered on his brow, but his hands never shook. At one point, a priest scoffed loudly, muttering prayers of condemnation. King Darius silenced him with a glare, his stern face betraying the tension beneath. Queen Lyra, however, never looked away. Her lips moved in silent prayer, but her eyes were fixed on Jason, holding him steady with unspoken faith. At last, Jason whispered, "It's done." He leaned closer to Lyra. "Now, princess, open your eyes." For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Her eyelids fluttered, her face pinched in confusion. And then her pale eyes, once clouded, shifted. The implants shimmered faintly, and clarity began to form. She gasped sharply, blinking again and again as the world rushed in for the first time. I can see," she whispered. Her small hands reached forward, trembling, landing on her mother's face. She burst into tears. "Mother, you're beautiful." Queen Lyra broke into sobs, cradling her daughter, tears streaming down her graceful face. Even King Darius's stern mask cracked, his mouth parting in stunned silence as his daughter turned toward him with wide, shining eyes. And for the first time, Lyra looked directly at Jason. The first clear face she had ever seen in her life. A human's face, calm, gentle, smiling. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. The chamber, once filled with suspicion and judgment, erupted in awe. Some fell silent in reverence. Others cried out that a miracle had been performed. But Jason knew it was not magic, not gods. Only science, skill, and the courage to try. The silence after Lyra's first sight did not last long. Whispers rippled through the chamber, then erupted into an uproar. Some nobles bowed their heads in reverence, hailing Jason as a divine messenger. Others snarled in rage, accusing him of heresy for using foreign tools to tamper with fate. The priests shouted over one another, their voices filled with fear and anger, demanding the girl be cleansed in sacred fire to undo the corruption. Jason stood tall, even as the storm of voices swelled. He expected hostility, but the depth of it shocked him. These people weren't merely debating science. They were wrestling with the very foundation of their faith. King Darius finally raised his hand, and the hall fell quiet. His deep voice rolled like thunder. "The human has done what none of our healers could. My daughter sees." His gaze swept over the nobles, hard and unyielding. "Would any of you undo this miracle? Would any of you blind her again?" A tense silence followed. None dared answer. Then, Queen Lyra stepped forward, her gown shimmering in the temple's light. She knelt beside Jason, an act that sent gasps echoing through the chamber. Looking up at him, her emerald eyes glistening with tears, she spoke. "This man is not a heretic. He is a savior. He gave me back my child." The words carried weight heavier than any decree. Even the most hardened nobles shifted uneasily. The priests hissed their disapproval, but their voices faltered under the queen's conviction. Lyra, clutching her doll, walked carefully to Jason's side. Her steps were shaky, her eyes still adjusting, but she reached his hand with determination. "He helped me," she said softly, her voice carrying across the chamber. "I want him to stay." For the first time in years, the king's stern face softened into something close to a smile. He looked at Jason, not as a stranger, but as a man who had just saved his bloodline. "You have given us a gift beyond value," Darius declared. "But understand this, human. Such a gift makes you both revered and despised. You have changed the fate of this house, and with it, the fate of the empire." Jason bowed his head slightly. "I didn't come to change empires, your majesty. I came to help a child." But even as he said it, He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down. This was no longer just about medicine or healing. He had stepped into the heart of a power struggle far larger than himself. And as Queen Lyra's gaze lingered on him, warm, grateful, and something more, Jason realized that his life among these people had only just begun. The weeks that followed were unlike anything Jason had ever known. Overnight, he became both a hero and a target. Songs were sung of the human who gave sight to the princess, while shadowed whispers in the palace corridors plotted his downfall. He had given Lyra her vision, but in doing so, he had torn a hole in traditions older than stone. Jason spent his days close to the royal family, teaching Lyra how to adjust to the world she had never seen. He guided her steps through the palace gardens, showed her the shifting colors of the dawn sky, and taught her the names of the stars that her people had long memorized only by faith. Every time her laughter rang through the halls, the walls of the palace seemed less heavy. But it was Queen Lyra who surprised him most. She sought his company more often than protocol demanded, sometimes under the guise of Lyra's lessons, other times in quiet moments when the court had retired. Her strength, her elegance, and the way her gratitude softened into something deeper stirred feelings in Jason he had buried long ago. And though they never spoke of it aloud, the way her eyes lingered on him told him the truth neither dared to say. King Darius, ever sharp, was not blind to it. One night, after Lyra had gone to bed, the king summoned Jason alone. He studied the human in silence, then finally said, "You have done what I could not. You brought light back to my daughter, and joy back to her mother. Many here call you dangerous, but I know better. You have become part of this house." Jason bowed, unsure of what the king was leading to. Then Darius added, his tone low but steady, "My people may not be ready for change, but I am. If my queen sees you as more than a savior, I will not stand in the way. Guard them both, Jason, for the enemies you have made are mine as well." That night, Jason understood fully. This world had claimed him as surely as he had claimed it. Months later, the human embassy granted him a residence near the palace, a white stone home overlooking the city of Zelthra. But he did not live there alone. Queen Lyra, her duty to the king now complete after years of political marriage, chose to step away from the throne. She came to Jason's side, not as a sovereign, but as a woman ready for a new life. And Lyra, vibrant and full of curiosity, ran through the halls of their new home with wide, shining eyes. The city whispered endlessly, some in scandal, some in awe. But within those walls, Jason no longer carried the burden of loneliness. He had a family, a place, and a future forged not by treaties or duty, but by love and the courage to do what no one else dared. He had come as a stranger with nothing more than a case of human medicine. He stayed as a husband, a father, and, whether he wanted it or not, a symbol of hope that one man could change the fate of a world. And for Jason, that was enough.